Hi, Charlie Spittle again, Mr. Gnosis. Now my section is Peace and Verbal Nonviolence. Adolescence is our first war. It is a psychological battlefield of young adulthood. We are all veterans of that war, those of us who are old enough to have lived through it and survive it and remember it. The first experience of real cruelty, put-downs, insults, mind games, rejections, cliques, jealousy, revenge, isolation, being bullied, fights, and suicidal thoughts. That's why parents share their war stories with their kids to show them they are not alone, and that's why it's important for us as adults to set an example to youth so they can become better people than we were, and maybe they won't hurt each other as much. October 30th, 2006, Charlie Spittle. If we want world peace, we have to start with ourselves first. We have to extinguish the darkness in our own hearts and minds. We must first be able to get along with our family, then neighbors, and before that we must learn to love ourselves and overcome our own fears, prejudices, arrogance, and ignorance. We must master the fundamentals first, like loving our neighbor as we love ourselves. Then we can get to tackle the bigger issues, like the conflict and problems in the Middle East. Small steps for a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a first step. Tao. The journey is world peace. Charlie Spittle, November 30th, 2006. A thing about conflict. What is important is how you are going to resolve it with the other parties involved, not who started it, because you can go forever and a day on who started it and still not resolve it, for it is the nature of conflict that in it both sides feel they were struck first. It is how you choose to mutually end it that can ultimately produce peace and harmony. Charlie Spittle, July 18, 2005. The color of peace is people together. Maddie Stepanek. Lots of people have different philosophies, theories, hypotheses, techniques, methods, and practices for establishing world peace. The one I propose is not grandiose and or political. The one I propose is that world peace can be obtained by something as simple, immediate, and within our realm of control as by the way we communicate with each other. The first step, communicate with each other civilly, with respect and decency, and then the change in our thoughts and beliefs will follow. Charlie Spittle, November 30th, 2005. Verbal nonviolence, or verbal pacifism, is the key to the beginning of the end of mind games. One of Martin Luther King's guidelines to nonviolence: refrain from the violence of fist, tongue, or heart. Through resisting participating in mind games and being a straight talker, you expose the other as malicious with the other's mind games. As Martin Luther King Jr. once said, "Punish me, I do not deserve it, but because I do not deserve it, I will accept it so that the world will know that I am right and you are wrong. You hardly know what to do. You feel defeated and secretly ashamed. You know that this man is as good as man as you are, that from some mysterious source he has found the courage and the conviction to meet physical force with soul force." Soul force is a term used by Gandhi that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. endorsed and incorporated in his own philosophy of nonviolence. So the end result will be no more mind games, just people talking honestly and directly. They will be straight talking. Sure, the insults, name-calling, and mind games will hurt, but with time you'll get over them. In the meantime, resist the temptation to strike back and the temporary relief and satisfaction you feel by a verbal counterattack, for in the long run, if you don't strike back, the person's conscience will tax him/her to stop, and you will break the cycle of violence psychologically and ultimately physically. If you do this interpersonal harmony will be accomplished more quickly and effective and efficiently between you and the other. Usually it takes a long time for this interpersonal harmony to exist. Take high school, for example. People insult each other to impress other people or because they're insecure about themselves and don't know other people, and people strike back and stand up for themselves, and animosity and enemies are created, and it is not until a familiarity is formed after a long time, a year or more of school, when enemies are comfortable with each other, each other's presence, that animosity becomes friendship, or at least a tolerance for each other. Why wait a year? Why not have it right now through verbal nonviolence? As the Bible says, the meek shall inherit the earth, and as well, blessed are the gentle meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger for thirst or for righteousness, they shall be satisfied. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. Blessed are the pure at heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the sons of God. Matthew 5:5-9, Charlie Spittle, January 24, 2004. We're all familiar with the concept of a roast, right? Well, imagine if people were just as humble, graceful, magnanimous, and self-effacing with people they don't know, as well as taking mockery, insults, and mimicking from friends, relatives, and colleagues. We would be much closer to world peace. Charlie Spittle, February 26, 2007. Nonviolence is the answer to the crucial political and moral questions of our time. The need for man to overcome oppression and violence without resorting to oppression and violence. Man must evolve for all human conflict, a method which rejects revenge, aggression, and retaliation. The foundation of such a method is love. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., speech accepting the Nobel Peace Prize, December 11, 1964. The first step towards world peace does not start with the politicians. It begins with us, each and every one of us, individual persons. The key to the initiation of world peace begins with verbal nonviolence, the very way we talk to and about each other, the way we communicate with each other. Verbal nonviolence means no insulting, no mind games, no gossiping and rumors, and includes speaking directly, honestly, and truthfully about how we feel and think about each other, about concepts, work, ideas, people, animals, and things, and holding true to this behavior of communication, even if the others around you or to you don't. It also includes not striking out physically violently towards what other people say about you or anyone else. Besides, it's the law, at least in North America. People can say whatever they want about you in public or private, freedom of speech. And you cannot physically strike that person simply based on what they say. That is assault. You can go to jail for that. If everyone can do this, there will eventually be no malice, revenge, hostility, and verbal violence, and no physical violence towards negative talk. And negative communication will vanish entirely from our communications toward each other. We will ultimately have straight, honest, truthful, clear communication, lucid, toward each other, and no misunderstandings. We will probably still disagree with each other, but there will be no disagreements based on misunderstandings, for that is a tragedy. Resulting from this will be a positive influence on how we think about ourselves and each other, and sooner or later there will be no negative thoughts. Psychological, verbal, and physical blocking is the key to world peace and harmony. Charlie Spittle, March 3, 2004. Humility and self-control are imperative in keeping peace within a society. The reason for this is anybody can call you or say anything about you that they want because of freedom of speech, at least in North America. You cannot physically strike that person because that is assault, You could use a verbal counterattack or comeback, but that just leads to an endless cycle of name-calling, mocking, and ridicule. The best thing to do is to ignore such verbal attacks and not strike back physically or verbally. In doing this, you give the offender nothing to work with, nowhere to go, and you dissipate the effect of the attack to peace and quiet. That's the way the law is designed, to prevent escalation of conflict, to keep a civilization civilized. Charlie Spittle, August 2nd, 2004. Education is the ability to listen to almost anything without losing your temper or self-confidence. Robert Frost. Since childhood and my young adult life, I have felt like a one-man army at war with the world. I've tried my best and continue to be verbally nonviolent. This means not giving into mind games, word games, puns, insults, mocks, backstabbing, gossip, lies, and innuendos. I've realized this is how the world communicates. That is the way of the world. But even though this is true, this is not the way of God or heaven. So I continued the fight for the rest of my life. Charlie Spittle, February 12, 2006. The reason I believe people play mind games is because ultimately they want to feel closer to each other, a part of each other. They want to relate to each other. That symptom, the mind games, are a sign and a flag raiser that all people want to be closer together, one. That accounts for my popularity. People believe that I'm a uniter and that I can get everyone to get along and understand each other and driving the human race forward and making the world a better place. Charlie Spittle, December 17, 2006. If people can treat time as an adversary to progress in human relations, something they must compete against, because it is one source that is irrecoverable once it's gone, and there's no getting back. A small break here. Kyle, can you shut that door, please? Thanks. The world of people and their interrelationships would heal and resolve much quicker, and peace will be established as soon as possible, sooner than the expectations of human condition will allow. If we can rise above the human condition and become better in forgiving and not seeking revenge, we can do this by becoming more patient and more tolerant and accepting and forgiving of things people say and do, and by coming to terms and learning to understand the other in our noble attempts to eradicate our own prejudices, biases, ignorance, and negative experiences of people, their speech and actions, and things. In other words, rise above the negative aspects of our human condition. You notice the saying, absence makes the heart grow fonder, and an expression I read from a female graduate from a friend's high school yearbook, that once you get to know someone, their faults seem to disappear, and that time heals all wounds, and someday we'll look back at this and laugh. These four above expressions are the positive effects on human psychology that come with the passage of time. But why wait to have these positive effects of time on human relations and psychology? Why not have it right now? We can do this through a paradox in human nature. We establish these positive aspects in human relationships sooner by being more patient with people, by trying to understand things from their point of view, by instead of being annoyed or offended by their differences, being more tolerant and acceptive to their uniqueness, and by being verbally nonviolent, not striking back if someone insults you in a verbal or physical way. Just as you would tell people you know or who are close to you get away with joking or mocking you like roasts in a friendly way, treat those you don't know with the same tolerance. You'll be surprised by the effects. Life is too short to allow time to gradually bring you these positive and appreciative and grateful aspects to your psychology and attitude towards people. Most of the time it's too late. So let's all try to become more patient, tolerant, understanding, and forgiving towards each other and making the world a better place. Charlie Spittle, October 23, 2004. Don't play mind games, but know how to read them, interpret them. Be aware of them even when they're not being played on you. People have a strange way of indirectly confessing their true experiences, emotions, thoughts, and feelings, whether they are conscious of them or unconscious of them. I think it's because, as the Bible says, the truth will set you free. And people want to be free by expressing their true selves. It's just sometimes socially acceptable to do it indirectly. It's twisted because it's not honest and direct, but that's just the way the world is. Do this and you will know the true motivations and reasons for why people are the way they are. Charlie Spittle, January 1st, 2005. The best way to win at mind games is to avoid them. June 20th, 2006. Charlie Spittle. Verbal nonviolence. The best comeback is no comeback at all. Charlie Spittle, May 29th, 2006. Mind games are not acceptable. That's why the media, movies, television shows, news, radio, newspapers, and magazines doesn't show or explain this subtle, insidious puns and an analogous type of communication. But in the real world, people play mind games all the time. Some people, whenever they open their mouths, it's some form or type of mind game. This is the way of the world, but this is not the way of heaven. To begin to have a heaven on earth, we must first communicate directly, honestly, and without negativity, sarcasm, insults, put-downs, or profanity. We must communicate as if we were already in heaven to begin to have a heaven on earth. Don't hate the players, people. Hate the game. That's why I refuse to play. November 5th, 2006, Charlie Spittle. The only thing we need to do to have a heaven on earth is for us to act like we're in heaven on earth. Charlie Spittle. There is much to be said about magnanimity. The fact that this word and its definition is rarely known or understood in today's world shows us that we have degenerated to a state of greater ignobleness. Magnanimous, according to the Webster's Dictionary, means generous in overlooking injury or insult, rising above pettiness, noble. Oxford Dictionary means nobly generous, not petty in feelings or conduct. If people could be more magnanimous by blocking and ignoring insults, mind games, and mockery, and not striking back with verbal counterattacks or reacting physically violently or playing mind games themselves to the teaser, then the people of the world can more quickly establish peace among themselves and smoother communication in discovering the truth about each other, relationships, and the nature of the world and the universe. The result of magnanimous behavior and speech would be straightforward, honest, and direct conversation with no misunderstandings. Charlie Spittle, September 6, 2004. When people first get to know each other, they sometimes play mind games and insult each other to get the upper hand over the other. They're really just insecure. Be magnanimous. This will disarm the tension of the fact that the two of you don't know each other, and you'll get along and get to know each other a lot easier and more smoothly than if you struck back with mind games and insults. Charlie Spittle, January 1st, 2005. Verbal nonviolence is a solution. It's not the solution. In stating this, I am saying it is not a panacea. It does not work all the time. It is not foolproof, and it is not for everyone, although I wish it was. People are diverse. They have different temperaments, levels of patience, tolerance, different personalities and characters. But what I am saying is verbal nonviolence is a solution, which means it works, not all the time, but I hope most of the time. And I believe it is a solution most people don't use, and more people should use it more often to resolve conflict, tension, and icebreakers. If they did, the whole world would begin to heal. Charlie Spittle, October 11, 2006. Like I said before, there are a few absolutes. Even my message, philosophy, and code of communication of verbal nonviolence is not absolute. Sometimes mind games, puns, and indirect messages are appropriate in communications, and sometimes they are the best form or way to communicate to an individual or group. In other words, mind games have their time and place, but I believe that the balance is sometimes mind games, not most of the time mind games, like most of the world communicates. Charlie Spittle, May 30th, 2006. There's an old saying that goes, "Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me." I don't believe the statement is true. I believe what you say, how you say it, and the timing in which you say it can affect people profoundly when it comes to their emotions, feelings, and behavior. But what if people behaved and acted as if this statement were true? What if we could block and ignore negative talk and profanity? I believe if we could, this would be the first step in the 1,000-mile journey for humanity to establish world peace. Charlie Spittle, May 5th, 2006. The reason man swears is because he does not have the words to say what's on his mind. Baines, Malcolm X. I want verbal nonviolence to be universal and ubiquitous to all humanity, affecting every level of human interaction from schools to churches and temples to businesses and homes, to workplace and public areas, to friends, family, strangers, teachers, students, lovers, co-workers, and bosses, and boyfriends and girlfriends and wives and husbands. Charlie Spittle, May 18, 2006. When you refuse to play mind games, the level of conversation goes up, for you are no longer talking about each other, you are talking about ideas. When you focus on the objective, you become less subjective and personal, and you inspire the others who are communicating with to talk about the objective, and eventually you'll be talking about problem solving, social awareness, politics, and philosophy. Your conversation will move on to bigger and better things. Like the saying goes, small people talk about people, big people talk about ideas. Charlie Spittle, May 30th, 2006. Peace. We all want it, but what price are we willing to pay to sacrifice for it? People say they want world peace, but the real war is within us. Do we truly have inner peace? Do we understand and get along with our family, friends, and loved ones, and co-workers and colleagues? We must have our houses in order, or try to have them in order first before we can set others straight. Charlie Spittle, June 2nd, 2005. Verbal nonviolence is a conscious decision in how we choose to communicate with each other. Charlie Spittle, January 10th, 2007. Next time someone insults you, e.g. use racial slurs, instead of being enraged and angry at them, feel sorry and have pity for them, and feel compassion for them, for something is wrong with their thinking. They're probably been hurt or misunderstood or had a bad experience or are nervous, insecure, tense, anxious, worried, and or ignorant, and were probably raised, taught, and conditioned wrong. See their spitefulness as a cry for help because of their ignorant prejudice. Remember, the harder they kick, the deeper they're wounded. If they had balance and everything is going good for them, they wouldn't need to use insults to make others feel inferior so they can feel superior. Charlie Spittle, January 10th, 2008. No one can make you inferior without your consent. Eleanor Roosevelt. When you ignore and psychologically block negative communication, insults, put-downs, and mind games, you render the verbal abuser powerless as his/her effect on you dissipates. Charlie Spittle, January 14, 2008. All communication is either a loving response or a cry for help. Verbal nonviolence is a path to a psychological nonviolence. Don't respond to what people say, but to what people do to develop a true inner psychological peace. Charlie Spittle, January 10, 2008. Recipient of violence verbal, while never inflicting violence verbal upon another. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and Charlie Spittle, January 10, 2008. Christ and Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr., gave me courage, inspiration, and hope when being verbally harassed and verbally abused while I'm trying to be verbally nonviolent. The only thing I'm putting in jeopardy is my pride and ego. Christ and Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. put their lives on the line and paid the ultimate price for us to achieve a greater sense of love, understanding, awareness, and peace. Charlie Spittle, January 25, 2008. Courage and cowardice are antithetical. Courage is an inner resolution to go forward in spite of obstacles and frightening situations. Cowardice is a submissive surrender to circumstance. Courage breeds creative self-affirmation. Cowardice produces destructive self-abnegation. Courage faces fear and thereby masters it. Cowardice represses fear and is thereby mastered by it. Courageous men never lose the zest for living, even though their life situation is zestless. Cowardly men, overwhelmed by the uncertainties of life, lose the will to live. We must constantly build dikes of courage to hold back the flood of fear. Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. The problem with communicating with people indirectly or through mind games is it insults their intelligence, that they don't know better or are obtuse or slow to perceive or understand. I believe it's best to be honest and direct most of the time. Sometimes indirect referencing is necessary to let the other person save face, or if you can't seem to get through to them. Charlie Spittle, January 16, 2008. Thank you.